Auburn is now Lenardi has Auburn as his overall number one team, which that's just subject to change next week. But right now, Auburn has climbed up there. You've got Gonzaga, who's climbing back up there, number one in the AP poll after Baylor lost back-to-back games. It's typical college basketball, a little blender action going on.
Yeah,
January blender.
Yeah, exactly. Last week was everybody's panic and say there's no great teams week. I don't know if there are yet or not. I think we still have to see. But there are teams, Auburn could be great. I don't think Auburn has shown they are yet. I don't think they've been asked to show that they are. They will be soon. Their Kentucky game is coming up sometime in the next week or 10 days. The thing about Auburn that's interesting is they play in a really good conference with really good teams. And somehow, even at that, managed to wind up with about as weak a schedule as you can possibly have. I can't explain it, but the way it worked out, they don't play how Auburn and LSU don't play twice. They don't. How Auburn and Kentucky don't play twice. They don't. The two other best teams in their league, they have one plays with. They don't go on the road to either of those. It's a really easy schedule. So if Auburn doesn't wind up with the best record among major conference teams, something's wrong. They absolutely should have it because their schedule's just not challenging enough to suggest otherwise. Pick any team in the Big Ten, they're going to have a more challenging schedule. Any team in the Big 12 where they play double round robin, more challenging schedule. Doesn't mean they'll be a better team than Auburn, but in terms of accomplishment, Auburn hasn't been asked to do very much to this point, and mostly for their own fault because they lost their opening game in the Battle for Atlantis against UConn, double overtime, lose that game so they don't play Michigan State or Baylor going forward. And then, they wound up, I think, down there playing Loyola, which, a nice win on a neutral floor, but not anything to suggest you're the number one seed in college basketball. And then they played LSU at home and won, which is a good win, and they won decisively. And then they went on the road to an Alabama team that is very capable and has a win over Gonzaga, but is kind of falling apart. I mean, Alabama over the last 3-4 weeks has lost, I think, 4 games in the last since right before Christmas. They've lost I think 4 times. So that win isn't so terribly rare. Winning at Alabama makes it significantly better, but it's not that rare to beat Alabama. So again, I have a lot of hope for Auburn in terms of potential, but I don't know who they're going to play. They're going to have to prove it, other than Kentucky. And again, they get that one in their gym, and I'm sure it'll be a really difficult environment for the Wildcats.
Yep, I know you're a poll agnostic, but as you know, I have a vote, and it was interesting because that was kind of the debate between Gonzaga and Auburn, and I chose Gonzaga as number one. A lot of people were pointing out, Gonzaga lost to Alabama and Seattle, and Auburn beat different times of the season, and I just kind of thought that Auburn didn't have a win on its schedule as good as UCLA, which is what Gonzaga have, and that was my tipping point in voting Gonzaga number one.
I think that's a reasonable approach. That's my sort of line of demarcation is who'd you beat? When I went through the NCAA mock selection process, I did it 4 times for various reasons, and at the end of it, I found that there are basically 2 schools of thought, and the prevailing school is who'd you play, where'd you play, how'd you do? That's the 3 prongs of the one approach. And that is, did you play a tough schedule? Did you play some of those tough opponents not on your home floor? And did you win a significant portion of those games? And then there's the other school of thought is, shirts and skins, 3 o'clock open gym, who you got? And I don't buy that at all. Because at the end of the day, if I could correctly say 100%, that in that scenario, that shirts and skin scenario, that Auburn's going to win all the time, that they're the best team, or Gonzaga's, or whoever it is. If I could say that, I always say that I would live in a very big house in Vegas. Now, I don't have to have that house in Vegas anymore because gambling's legal almost everywhere. So I could have a very big house in Pittsburgh now, but I would still have a very big house. And that's, no one's eyes are infallible. So eyes shouldn't be a part of it. You shouldn't just say, well, I think they're the best team, and that should mean anything. It shouldn't mean anything, because if it meant something, again, you'd be a great professional gambler and live in that very big house in Vegas or wherever you want to put it now. And so I'm a big believer in the school of thought that goes over that idea of who'd you play, where'd you play, how'd you do. And so, like Kevin said, that win that Gonzaga has over UCLA on a neutral floor in Vegas, that says something. And how do we know UCLA is good? Well, they have the metrics, they have certain accomplishments themselves, etc. And again, you look at that LSU game. Is LSU better than UCLA? Maybe. I think you can make the argument either way, in that case, which one's a more significant win. But I don't think there's any question that beating somebody on a neutral floor is much more significant than beating somebody at home.